Hi, I'm Femi Okay.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Millions of people worldwide deal with the debilitating blood disorder known as sickle cell anemia.
But does a recent medical breakthrough hold the key to a cure? That's today on The Stream. An estimated 250,000 babies are born each year with sickle cell anemia. That's a genetic blood disorder which can cause crippling pain and shorten lifespans.
For much of the 20th century, the disease was relatively invisible because it was so often misdiagnosed. Race, poverty, and stigma are just a few of the challenges in treating the blood condition. It affects those of African, Indian, Middle Eastern, Hispanic, and Mediterranean heritage.
But now doctors hope that an experimental procedure could lead to a cure. Here to discuss this and what it's like living with the disease, we have in our studio Dr. Jamie Wells. She's Director of Medicine for the American Council on Science and Health. In Columbia, South Carolina, Dr. Julie Cantor. She is the Director for Sickle Cell Research at the Medical University of South Carolina, and she's also overseeing one of the studies related to that recent breakthrough. In Birmingham, England, Jenica Leah, a children's author and sickle cell advocate who writes about her journey with the disease. And in Abuja, Nigeria, Bukola Bolarinwa, president of the Sickle Cell Aid Foundation. She's also a member of the Stream community, and she pitched us the idea for this show. Bookie, why? Why did you want the world to hear about sickle cell disease? Why was it so important to you?
I think that, first of all, sickle cell doesn't get enough publicity. But then for this, when this news came out, it was in most major news outlets, but no one was really talking about it, and there wasn't really any way for us to ask questions. I work with a lot of people that live with sickle cell disease, and they all came to me and said, what does this new breakthrough mean for us? How soon, is it going to be applicable? Is this a cure? Can we call this a cure? And I wasn't able to get answers to those questions, so I thought, you know what, why?
The Stream might be able to help you. Let's start at basics, though, Janica, because you have sickle cell disease. What does that mean? When people ask you, what does that mean? What do you tell them? What's the science?
When people ask me what sickle cell disease is, I tell them that it's a blood condition which affects my red blood cells. So instead of there being normal round-shaped cells, they're actually, sickle-shaped like a letter C. They're sticky, and because of their shape, they can clump together easily, blocking veins, and that then causes a sickle cell crisis, as you can see on the diagram there. Sickle cell crisis is very painful. It can occur anywhere in the body at any time. Every sickle is different, so I tend to get them in my back, legs, and chest pain. But I know it can be different for a lot of other sicklers as well. And generally, I know that it's very, very painful.
I have to say, I think we can make her an honorary physician today. I don't think we need us.
I agree. I was just impressed. That was the easiest, best description.
That was the most. All right, bye, doctors.
Informative.
Well, I'll tell you why you might still be needed. This is an answer we got from someone online when we asked what they tell people about living with the disease. P. Allen Jones tweets in, where do I begin? We're born with it, we live with the complications, and then we die as a result of it. And she goes on to say one of the biggest myths that she finds, and this is here in the US at least, is that sickle cell is a black disease. She says it's not a black disease, it's a disease of the blood. And this notion breaks a long time myth. Jamie, could you delve into that myth for us?
Unfortunately, as we were talking about publicity and things, the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this era of 24-hour news, internet. So whatever diseases and disorders get the most attention, a lot of times require having a celebrity attached to it, require having the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge with a gimmick like that, but those things are effective. Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's, even though Parkinson's disease was on the radar, contributed, when he started his charity, up to $700 million in this period of time. So it's a continuous endeavor. We need to make everyone informed about it. There are false perceptions about a lot of disorders, and this is one with this new news about the potential gene therapy paper that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine is something that gives us an opportunity not to let the discussion die, because there are plenty of people who have a lot of hope. There are a lot of wonderful advances in research already taking place around the world with regard to this blood disorder, other blood disorders that impact 90,000 Americans are impacted by this. over 300,000 babies, as you said, are born worldwide. So when there's life, there's hope. And
totally agree with you. I think one thing that is important to clarify based exactly on what that tweet was, is that it's a genetic disease.
Yes.
So anybody can get it, just like anybody can have brown hair and brown eyes. And in the US, we have a lot of individuals affected who are Black or African American or African, because people who carry the gene for the disorder but don't have the actual disorder usually came from areas of Africa or India or the Middle East where there was a lot of malaria. Because people who have the trait, meaning the carrier status, are protected from malaria. And when those two people get together and have babies, that's what actually results in the disease. But anyone can have it. I have white patients, I have Black patients, I have Hispanic patients, you name it. Anybody can have sickle cell disease.
Bookie, help us out with this. I have sickle cell trait. This is from UG Sickle Cell Rescue F, so in Uganda. Sickle cell is not contagious. And have a look at this tweet here. I have sickle cell, please hug me. I can't make you sick. Bookie, I know there was an instance where somebody said something to you that was really quite shocking and actually illustrated how little they knew about sickle cell disease. Can you share that with us one more time?
Okay, yeah, it's been more than once actually. I've had situations where, when I'm doing my advocacy work or I'm talking to people about sickle cell or living with sickle cell, and they say, oh, wow, you're really beautiful, you look really healthy, you look really vibrant. I can't believe that you have sickle cell disease. Are you sure you have the disease, or are you sure you have the trait? And I'm like, oh, I'm sure, I know what I have. But it's that misconception where people expect people that live with sickle cell to look a certain way or be a certain way or act a certain way. And, there's that stigma that it's almost treated like a disability in a way. And, it does have really serious complications, but, the social stigmas make it even more complex when people look at you and expect you to be a certain way.
I want to just put up Janika and Bookie on screen so we can see them side by side. The trouble is we're talking about this debilitating disease, this very painful disease, and we see you two here looking incredibly healthy. Now, is this a problem with sickle cell disease that people don't believe you?
It's a huge problem that we face all the time. It's a huge problem. We see lots of people who come into the emergency department, and I get a call from another doctor that says, they can't be sick, look how good they look. And they're having pain, but these are individuals who are strong and they deal with pain all their lives. So they know how to deal with pain. They're not on the ground in tears, but they're telling you what they need and how they need it, and they're not believed because they look so good. You always have to trust the patient.
And patients know their bodies, so they have to...
We do.
Janika, go ahead.
We do, and I think that a lot of the times that's where the difficulty lies, because, I'm 27, I've had sickle cell for 27 years, and even though I'm in a very, very painful crisis, I myself find it a lot more traumatic and causes me a lot more pain and stress if I'm crying and hysterical and, acting as if I should act in pain, so to speak. So if I'm there and I'm saying, my pain level is 10 out of 10, and I need this pain relief and that pain relief. Well, the difficulty then is, if you're in that much pain and you're just in here so calm asking for this pain relief, why? Then there becomes the complication of, are you addicted to drugs? Are you just here to get pain relief?
Well, this is also part
and it's a shame.
This is also part of the problem with the medical community. You have someone like Dr. Julie who runs a center for sickle cell, but there's great disparity in medical professionals, caregivers, in rural environments that are not part of big tertiary care facilities potentially. So some people have treated sickle cell patients who have sickle cell disease or forms of illness, and other people have had less exposure to that. So that is one of the reasons why awareness and education is so important to everybody, not just the general public, but to the health professionals as well.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to share a couple of stories because both Janika and Bookie, your stories are being echoed online. So this is Tolani on Twitter who says, there are so many examples of what you just named that have happened to her, constantly having to defend my health to doctors, nurses, and the public. Another person, Tanika, says they expect you to be a drug addict. They think you're lying or exaggerating the things that are going on with you. You almost have to be on the brink of death to get the necessary attention. So just elaborating on what you were saying there. But I want to shift a little bit because we got a video comment from someone who is living with sickle cell. This is Zuleha out of Abuja, Nigeria, and here's what she told us.
I have been living with this illness for the past 40 years. It doesn't define me. I live my life to the fullest. despite being discriminated against, despite being stigmatized, despite all the hardships. I work, I own 2 companies, and I live my life. I would like to advise all couples intending to get married to please get a genotype test before getting married.
So Buki, she says she's living her life to the fullest, but then she ended it with a little advice for people. Is that something you recommend for people you talk to?
It's a very complex issue, and it's something that we deal with when we do our advocacy work. A lot of people come to us and say, okay, you know what, I carry the trait, I'm with a partner, he also carries the trait, what should we do? Should we end the relationship? Should we go ahead and have a baby knowing that there's a chance that the child can have sickle cell? At the end of the day, all we do is counsel people on what are the possibilities of having a child with sickle cell. So if you carry the trait, for example, there's a 1 in 4 chance in every pregnancy that you can have a child living with sickle cell. It's very difficult then to go ahead and tell people, you know, on the one hand that we're advocating for sickle cell and telling people to live, you know, their lives to the fullest, but at the same time trying to tell them that, well, but don't have any child with sickle cell, because that's a very, very terrible thing to do. So what we do is that we counsel people, we give them the advice, and then we ask them to make their own decision based on what they think is best.
I think it's so hard to give advice, just like you're talking about, because when you're talking to someone who are in love, you're not going to say, no, don't go have children, but understand the risks of having children.
Exactly. We've tackled that a lot in over in Birmingham. I've teamed up with another sickler to start a YouTube channel, which is called United Sicklers, where we discuss, you know, certain topics like relationships. So when is it the right time to ask your partner to get tested to see if they have sickle cell? And then what do you do with the result once you find out? Because these are real life situations that happen. So it's a very difficult situation.
And I think it's important that people understand that if you carry the trait, the sickle trait, you don't have the sickle cell disease. But if you and another person decide to have children, you all have a 1 in 4 chance of having a child with that disease. But one of the big myths is that having sickle cell trait can cause a crisis. And that really isn't true. For the most part, individuals who live with sickle cell trait are totally healthy individuals. And the only time there's any risk is extreme circumstances, like the military or practicing football in 100-degree weather. And even those problems are incredibly rare.
All right, ladies, let me just move on to the reason why Buki actually asked us to do this show, which was there was news of a breakthrough with a sickle cell disease treatment. Let me just go back here to my laptop. This is from the France-India Summit, and this is quite remarkable. Have a listen.
Go ahead. So the advances we have done on the field of gene therapy for hemoglobinopathy is the cure of a young boy with sickle cell anemia that has been cured by the transplantation of the autologous stem cells ex vivo modified with an antivirus vector expressing the therapeutical gene. Great.
The word that jumped out from there, that little tweet, was Professor Marina saying cure. She said cure, Malika. What are people asking?
So people are picking up on that because they want to know whether or not that's premature. So this is a tweet. We got several questions. I'm going to throw 2 at you, Julie. This is Dr. Vasta, who says, it sounds promising. Are there any obvious risks reported, like previous gene therapy trials? And another person, so that's 1. This next one is Tolu, who says, how long will it take to mass produce?
Such good question. So I think it has incredible curative potential. I don't think it's a cure yet. I don't think we can go quite that far. It's important to understand the process. What we do in gene therapy is we actually use the patient with sickle cell disease's own bone marrow, and we put in a new gene into their marrow that makes healthy hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the protein in the red cell that carries oxygen, just like Jalika was talking about earlier. And so if we can put in new healthy hemoglobin that's not sickle, the blood cells won't sickle. Now, then we have to give that bone marrow that we've now doctored back to the patient. And to do that, we have to do an autologous bone marrow transplant. In English, that means we have to give chemotherapy and then let the new bone marrow gets infused and sort of swims back where it's supposed to be into the bloodstream. into the bone marrow to make new healthy cells. It's a long process, and it has great potential, and we might be there. But so far, we've only had this one individual who's really got curative potential with this. And we're really excited. We're doing more work, but I wouldn't quite say it's there yet. To answer those questions, we've come so far from the old gene therapy studies from before that were used for immune deficiencies. And so, yes, we've made incredible headway, and I think this is very applicable to other diseases as well. But we've also got a little bit further to go. It is right now not available for mass production, and it is expensive. But we can do it, and we can get there. My goal one day somehow is that when you know you're going to have a baby with sickle cell disease, we can take the cord blood from that baby and insert the gene into the cord blood and give that doctored cord blood back before the first year of life. But we're not there yet.
All right, so Bookie and Jenica, I'm going to take turns with you because Malika and I have community questions. I know you have questions too. Bookie, you go first.
I think my main question is to do with age, because a lot of sort of like stem cell transplants and things like bone marrow transplants tend to have limitations when it comes to age. So they tend to work more successfully for children or people under a certain age. So my question would be, would it be applicable for people who are already living with sickle cell or in their 20s or 30s? Is this something that can be explored?
Absolutely. So the way the study is being done right now, it's hosted by a sponsor who's called Bluebird Bio, and they're an amazing company and wonderful to work with. And I'm not just saying that, I actually mean it. And they were sponsoring the study in France. And we have a very similar study that we're doing here in the United States, where we are actually only taking individuals with sickle cell who are 18 and older, so all adults. And I actually had the pleasure of presenting this data back in December, where we presented on 7 adults who've received this therapy. So yes, we definitely know it's possible. We've identified a few problems that we've actually found solutions for, we think, so we're pretty excited. And moving forward, right now, we're only in adults. So as of right now, the only limitations are based on organ function, not age.
This question comes from Amy. She says, what's the long-term safety, and will the altered stem cells last for a patient's lifetime?
Awesome question.
That's the big what if at this point.
It is. It's a big what if. We don't have the answer yet.
All right.
But it's promising. This one case that they reported, it's very unlikely for doctors typically to get excited about one case, but I think there's reason to be excited, and I think it's promising, and I would say cautious optimism would be the most accurate place to be right now in terms of that. But this patient that was published is 15 months out. So we need the passage of time. We need more people to be enrolled in these studies, and that work is some of that work is underway, and see what the long-term effects of that are. But the process itself is not just taking a Tylenol or something like that. It is an involved one that has risks and is typically reserved at this point for the most severe cases.
Exactly. And right now, because it's still early in its trials and experimental therapy, we do reserve it for people who've had a lot of difficulty with their sickle cell disease. And that can mean they've had a stroke, which is one of the biggest complications. They can have severe chronic or frequent episodes of severe pain, or other areas of organ damage like heart or kidneys, but not so severe that they can't tolerate the actual procedure. So there's some sort of middle area, and that's what we're really focused on. And we are making incredible headway and improvements in this therapy. Again, I wouldn't say we're at curative potential yet. We're at what we call disease modifying. Can we make your life better potential?
And the great thing about it is, and the potential for it is, that with a bone marrow transplant from someone else, you can have risk of rejection. With regard to a stem cell transplant, you're taking your own cells. So that's why with certain people, I think it's less than 18%, Dr. Julie can contribute to that conversation, of those who have matched sibling donors. A lot of times sickle cell disease can run in families and such. So the option and this new technology would be really promising, because you don't have to wait for a match or wait for a donor if you're in line for that.
Janika, I want to bring in another voice here. This is Nicole Chen. And Janika, I'm going to pass this video comment over to you. She is the sister of a man who died from complications of the disease. And this is what she says she went through. Have a listen to Nicole.
My brother was Sean Webb. He was diagnosed in his teens. And thank God, bless the strength that he had to handle his situation. What we needed was a doctor who understands sickle cell anemia and knew how to treat sickle cell anemia, and we found that at Jackson Memorial Hospital with Thomas Harrington. Back then it was hard to find a doctor who knew about sickle cell and how to treat it.
So I wanted to know Janika's thoughts on maybe the trickle-down effect from this research to doctors, your local doctor, and having them understand and be able to treat everyone who comes in.
That's a good question. Well, not question, but it's a good comment. And I can actually relate to that because one of my best friends, Nathan, he also passed away from sickle cell. One of the things I would say, which goes in hand with what I've experienced and also what that lady had experienced with her brother as well, is that even though there are some excellent doctors out there that know about sickle cell and know, what they're doing, I still do believe that there's an element of trial and error when it comes to our condition. I don't think every single patient is the same. And in what I've experienced and what I've seen, my friend go through, some of the times they don't know what they're doing. They're just literally trying things out and seeing if it works. And it's a shame that they have to do that. But the problem is they don't know until they do. And what they try on one patient may not work on another patient.
I would just
Can I just jump in really quickly there? I lost one of my really good friends as well, Noura, last year to sickle cell. And when he was admitted in hospital, he was only seen by the house doctor on call because he was admitted in the middle of the night, and he passed away because by the time, before she had the opportunity to go call a hematologist or call, a resident or more senior doctor to actually understand what are the complications that he's going through, he had already passed away. So what often happens is when someone with sickle cell comes in, you're just being treated either for the pain that you're getting immediately, there are no x-rays or any of the other things that need to be done, quickly, because sickle cell crisis needs it's an emergency, it needs urgent attention, but it's treated with such a lackadaisical attitude. So I think that the level of healthcare you get, even in Nigeria that has such a huge sickle cell burden, is so wide, it's so varied. You find some people that know a lot about it and some that know nothing.
It's totally variable.
One of the things that I was about to just respond to that young woman who lost her brother, sadly. One of the things in this country that's of benefit is we have a newborn screening program. And there's prenatal testing if people are interested in doing that, which we addressed some of the issues with regard to that. But after 24 hours of life of an infant, a blood test is sent to the state and it is tested for and screened these different blood disorders. And so learning that information earlier can hopefully stop a lot of negative things from happening and disease progression, which is a wonderful thing that in the United States we have the opportunity to do.
Yes, so what we've actually proven with newborn screening is that we can extend the lifespan well into adulthood, and 98% of our patients in the United States living with sickle cell disease, thank God, are now living it to be adults. But just like the young lady said, and like the guests here have said, we desperately need to educate more doctors. We've set up a whole program in South Carolina to allow telementoring just like this, to talk to doctors.
And Dr. Julie and Dr. Jamie, I'd be remiss to say that, of course, you are based in the US, and then we've got Janika and we've got Buki. Janika's in the UK, Buki is in Nigeria. Janika and Buki, do you think about your lifespan? Is this something that you think about? Are you thinking about, do you plan differently, do you think, because you have sickle cell disease? Janika?
Not at all. I don't think about my lifespan. I think death is just a part of life anyway. And once my time on this earth is over, it will be over, whether that's to do with sickle cell or, to do with some other unfortunate accident. I'm not going to limit myself or live in fear of the fact that I could die younger than somebody else just because I have this condition. I just live my life to the fullest.
Okay.
You're awesome.
I actually have the opposite reaction. I've lost too many people to sickle cell, especially living in Nigeria and working with the foundation with so many sickle cell warriors. So death is constantly on my mind. I see it every day. It's a part of the work that we do. So I think it actually has the opposite effect on me. It really motivates me to try and do as much as possible as I can in my time on earth. And I feel like, my time is limited, so I want to skydive and go bungee jumping and do everything I can while I have the opportunity to.
Buki and Janika, Dr. Julie and Dr. Jamie, thank you so much for being part of this program. We are not done yet. Go online, stream.aljazeera.com online. We will all be there and we can continue this conversation about sickle cell disease. See you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again. We are talking today on the stream about sickle cell disease, a potential breakthrough that might end up being a cure. We have Dr. Jamie, Dr. Julie, Janica and Buki all with us. Thanks for coming from our main show to this show. So many questions about this potential breakthrough, Malika.
Which is why right before we entered into the post show, we got this tweet from Ibrahim, because we haven't really touched on this aspect. Ibrahim tweets in, bone marrow transplant is a procedure for the treatment of sickle cell disease, which we talked about, but he says many victims in Africa can't afford it. Another person writes in, Bolanli, says the cost of available therapies is always too high for many with the disease to access treatments. We have to look for ways to drive the costs down. Julie, is that something that you see being feasible, making sure that these costs are affordable in the near future?
So I think one thing that's important is there is a cure for sickle cell disease. Bone marrow transplant is a cure. It's just not an available cure for everyone. And obviously that's not good enough. But I do think it's important that there's a lot of speculation on there is no cure. There is a cure. It's just not universally available. There are other disease modifiers and lots of new drugs that we're working on. So really cool stuff that is going to be more widely available and cost effective. What we need to do first in some areas like Nigeria is get newborn screening in, because the most important thing we can do first is start patients on penicillin. And penicillin's not expensive. The problem is diagnosing kids right away at birth and getting them the help they need.
So, Buki, why can that not happen in Nigeria? Can you talk to Dr. Julie about why bone marrow transplants, newborn screening, why that's not happening in Nigeria?
It boils down to cost. That's just what it is. I mean, I was going to ask the doctor. I know in the US, hydroxyurea is given to most children that live with sickle cell. But
Can you
in
just
Nigeria,
explain what that is for people who don't have any experience with sickle cell disease?
Hydroxyurea is it's a drug that helps increase the fetal hemoglobin in people living with sickle cell, and it helps reduce crisis, especially in young people. And I take it, and it's really, really improved my life. But a lot of people in Nigeria can't afford it. It's about 10,000 naira, which is, I don't know, maybe $40 or $50 a month for a pack of hydroxyurea for a month. Most people just can't afford it. And that's even minus the basic drugs that you have to take, like folic acid and penicillin. Things like stem cell transplants are completely out of it, because you have to travel to India and other countries for them to do it. It's not really available here. So it's just a lot of the therapies that, they're great, they're good news, but if people that need it the most can't afford it, then it really just seems like just another far-fetched thing.
And I think that's a total huge problem, because where are most babies born with sickle cell disease? In sub-Saharan Africa and in Nigeria. So when we do what we do, we have to do it for everyone, not just for people in the US or in the UK. And I think that us as researchers are aware of that and really trying to figure out how do we give the best care, the most care to the most people.
So how to start that? This is a tweet from McCarthy. He says, we need to give it as much attention as cancer and HIV. Jamie, you were talking about this earlier, about the ALS challenge, the ice bucket challenge.
That moved the needle. I mean, and not only did it move the needle financially in terms of the ice bucket challenge, ALS is a condition that's a neurodegenerative condition that's ultimately fatal. And it's very devastating to families. It's often called Lou Gehrig's disease as well. And most of the people live in silence with regard to that, or only learn of it because some family friend had it or some family member had it. But the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge went viral 2 years ago or something like that, and a tremendous amount of money was raised, and a lot of advances in research have resulted as a result of that. So it's not, one of the key things with regard to getting your voice heard is this was a wonderful watershed event, the publication of this paper that was picked up globally, but it can't stop. Continuation of this kind of discussion, staying in contact. I'm in contact with you guys forever now because you're my inspiration and new life coaches. But also, anytime you can write about it, anytime you can connect with someone. I was the medical expert for the Boomer Esiason and Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, another genetic disorder that cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder that doesn't affect a lot of people. These rarer conditions, by sheer volume of people, don't get a lot of times the attention. Boomer Esiason is a professional football player who has his own show, has a son with cystic fibrosis, and he and, as I mentioned before with regard to Michael J. Fox, their foundations have raised tremendous amounts. So Unfortunately and fortunately, we need to make our famous people and people who have the ability to be powerful, whether it's in research, government, publicity, media. I mean, it's a wonderful thing that you're devoting such time to such a topic, and we're so responsive to someone in Nigeria. I mean, I think this is incredible. Do you know how rare it is that physicians can connect with patients around the world? You can learn that way. That's extraordinary.
Yes.
You can share information. That's true collaboration, and only with collaboration can innovation happen.
And I'd just like to pick up on something that you mentioned there, because I know that you mentioned cystic fibrosis and a couple of other disorders, which are, you said they're not very common. They don't affect a lot of people. And I think one of the key things that we need to be realizing here is that sickle cell is one of the most common genetic disorders in the world. So why is it that, diseases like cystic fibrosis there's more awareness of it, there's more, funds and things like that are going out there towards this, where there's a condition that is, it's more common than that one, yet there's not as much awareness and there's not as much people speaking about it and knowing about it.
Danica,
I think that is one of the key things.
You must have thought about this a lot. Why do you think that is?
My main belief for that is because it does mainly affect people of African and Caribbean descent. I think that if sickle cell was a disease that affected more, I know it does affect people from other races, but if it affected more people that were, European or white, then let's say, if it affected more people like that, I think it would be more widely known about. And I think that's the elephant in the room, that sometimes people don't like to speak about these situations. Cancer affects a lot of people.
You are
and,
totally right.
not
It
just
is
one
the
particular
Can I just say as well, I think that part of the issue with genetic disorders in particular, so if you look at Nigeria, for example, Nigeria has the highest rate of sickle cell in the world. We have millions of people living with sickle cell, hundreds of thousands of births every year, way more than HIV, way more than cancer, and a lot of other diseases that get way more funds. But the problem is, with genetic disorders, either you're born with it or you're not. So if you're born with it and it affects you and your family, you're really concerned about it. But if it was something like HIV or cancer, because you know that you can get it along the way, anybody can get HIV, anybody can get malaria, anybody can get cancer. But with sickle cell, if it doesn't affect you, if it doesn't affect your family, if you don't carry the gene, then it's like, why do I care? Do you know what I mean? So I think that that's also a big part of it.
Which is true.
I also think that
It
now
is,
that
and I think that goes in hand as well.
just now that
I was going to say, I think it just encourages.
Danica, finish your sentence,
ahead,
and
Doctor.
Dr. Julie will wait for you to finish your sentence. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say that's one of the things that, as part of my advocacy, I'd like to hear more people living with the condition speaking up about it. It was something that I used to hide and shy away from. And now I find that speaking out about it, it's encouraged other people living with sickle cell to speak up about it as well, because there's a lot of us living with it. So where are we?
Yes, exactly what you just said. Totally agree. Now that we have so many people living longer and living stronger, we need you guys to talk, to let people know you're there. I have young teenage girls and boys who need mentors. They need strong women like you all to know that they can have a life in front of them and to have someone help coach them along the way.
Let me show you something here. This is Jenica's book, My Friend Jen, A Little Different, available now on Amazon. Little advert on non-advertising Al Jazeera. This is you and your book, Jenica. And then this, I recognise this because you two schooled me well, Jenica and Bookie. Normal cell, this is a sickle cell. This is why we have a sickle cell crisis. And this is a normal blood flow. Jenica, tell us just very briefly the story behind your book.
The story behind my book, My Friend Jen, is about me as a child, my friend Jen. So my friend Jen has sickle cell, but just because she has this condition, there isn't actually anything that she can't do. She's just a little different to, me and you who don't have sickle cell. So my friend Jen basically just explains what sickle cell is and how Jen stays well with her condition. So what things she needs to do to stay well and still be able to aspire to all of her dreams and all of her goals and live as normal life as possible.
How's the book gone down?
The book has gone down excellently. It's been really effective. I had somebody dress up as my friend Jen for World Book Day, so that was amazing for me. The main thing was for it just to really appeal to children, because I think one of the things that I definitely suffered with as I was a young child was that there wasn't enough information out there, and what was out there was very negative, and it sort of held me back. It was a lot of you can't do this and you can't do that, and there was no explanation as to why. So this book is more of a sort of, you know, you can do these things, but there's other things that you might need to consider more than what someone else needs to consider. But if you consider these things, you can still go out there and, you know, you can do whatever you want to do, just as long as you keep in mind that you have got sickle cell. So, you know, that's basically it, just to give young people just some inspiration and some hope.
That's just awesome. Everybody has limitations. I can't go run a marathon tomorrow, and I shouldn't try to do it. And we try to tell all our individuals, live within your limitations, but don't ever let them stop you. It just might mean you need to stay hydrated, or maybe you shouldn't go out and have all those drinks. But you can do anything and be anyone, and you should never let, you may have sickle cell, but it doesn't have you.
Ooh, I feel we need to pause our conversation right there. Malika, what do you have for us finally?
I will end with this tweet from Major General, who says this was an incredible show. Power to these two young, shrewd women. A very informative show. And I know people online have learned a lot, so thank you.
Bookie, anytime you want to suggest another program idea for us, feel welcome. We're at your disposal. Bookie and Janica.
Hopefully when there's a final cure, we will.
We'll have you back. Dr. Julie, Dr. Jamie, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.